Hello, everybody. As ever, let me know if you can see and hear me. Hopefully that's not a bad sign. I see Quindy, as ever, here to help us. She's very helpful to us. We're going to do some fun stuff today. We're going to look at something new. You all may be more in the loop than I am because I went away this weekend and we left Thursday night, so I haven't had a chance yet to catch up on Reaper Live. But I did kind of skim ahead and see that the information about the swag box and the, I think it's Barrowgate, I think it's called the Barrowgate box, and then you can get them together. I saw that there was some discussion of that, and they named all the colors of the super washes. I can't tell you what I have because I haven't been told what maps to map, and it's prototypes. But we'll take a look at what I have, so it'll give you some idea of what those are. I also noticed that there was mention of an Exemplar Palette. I showed you all this some months ago, I think. This is from their Kickstarter. I don't know if the Reaper one, the Reaper box one is going to have all the same features and whatnot. But let's look at it briefly. So it looks a little clunky compared to some of the slimmer ones, but that's because you get this compartment. So at least on the one I got. Again, I do not know if the Reaper one is the same. So you can put a brush in here. It comes with this plastic thing. This is what's for sale on their website. So if you're not getting a Reaper box and you like the look of this, I think these are on sale now. Then inside, this is their sponge. It's kind of foamy. Seems to work pretty well. I'm a little concerned. I'm not sure you can see it. There's a little bit of damage, and that seems to have happened fairly quickly, but I like the way the sponge works, so I will probably just live with that. I don't use this on the show as much because the footprint's a little larger and my desk space is so confined. Plus this way I can keep this one, if I have paint that for a project that I'm working on, which I should have. If I hadn't gone away this weekend, there would be paint for a project that I'm working on here. And I can keep that without having to throw out the paper just because of the show, which is what I was having to do with my old palette. This is with a wet palette, there's kind of a balance depending on where you live between whether you want it completely sealed or you want a little air to escape. If you live somewhere humid, you can kind of create a little terrarium in there where the moisture collects on the top and then goes back down into the paint. I have not figured out the perfect balance. This works pretty well. It works better than my Masterson where you just kind of had to leave a little corner open. I'm much happier with this than my Masterson. I do also like the red grass. Other than I still don't know if I like their paper. Casmania 7S is that is copper tape that I added to the bottom. That was one of the Kickstarter things. I don't know if they sell it with that. It was like a copper sticker. You can get copper sheet and just put it in the bottom. And with my old Masterson, pennies have to be of a certain age to actually have enough copper content to make a difference. I think it's 1982 or earlier, something like that. And then I had a few pieces of cut up copper sheet that you should be able to find at the hobby store, I think. So you have alternatives even if you can't find that kind of thing that sticks to the bottom the way they produced it. There's also this stuff, which I haven't used a lot, although is much more viable with these palettes than with my old Masterson, because I had to put so much water in there because you need to put, 16 drops per ounce of water. And the sponge I used, I didn't use the Masterson sponge, I had something else, required a lot of water, so I would have gone through this in minutes. So I didn't use that, but it's more viable on these. I haven't been using them. I've tried to be better about not letting my palettes molder. I'm never great about it. Sometimes it's like the next Monday will come and I'm like, oh, I never dumped that out from the previous Monday. Hey, Melander, briefly, it seems. So what this is what I was doing this weekend. I went over to Chattanooga to see this exhibit, which if you live anywhere near Chattanooga and you can get to the Hunter Museum before September 5th, I recommend that you do it. It had artwork by Oh, so many wonderful people. Brahm, Michael Whelan. There was a Frazetta. There was the art of the cover of the old Red Box D&D, and another big. They named what the word, like I recognized that it was a dragon and a guy that was kind of coming up on it, and they named the D&D book it was from, and I didn't recognize the book, but I recognized the picture, so I don't know what that was. And there's work from older people too, like, I mean, older artists from further in the past. Doré, Lane Decker. There's a James Gurney, one of the Dinotopia pictures. It was really fun and cool and almost validating to see the kind of stuff we like taken seriously in a museum, because there tends to be this illustration versus fine art division that I think is really stupid. Just because you paint something to be on a magic card or the cover of a book, I don't see why that invalidates it as art, but there are attitudes that it does. So it was really nice to see that not being the case. If you live near Flint, Michigan, the Flint Institute of Arts will be showing this, let's zoom in, see if you can see my handwriting, starting September 24th and running until January 8th. So if you do a web search for Flint Institute of Arts, you should be able to find their webpage and additional information. Valander is saying images like that are a masterclass in and of themselves on light and NMM. Wow. Yes, studying illustrations and 2D artwork is very useful to us, because miniatures are so small that the more we do what these kinds of artists are doing, the better our figures look. So that idea of, it's black there and it's white there, that level of contrast, that's why we talk about contrast, because to really make this arm look three-dimensional, even though a miniature is three-dimensional, it works better if you do the same thing that they're doing here. If you can't go, you can get this book. It's on Amazon, at least it's on Amazon US. I don't know about other countries. And there's even a coupon for it right now. So I decided to wait and see if I could buy it at the museum to support the museum. So I paid more, but I supported the museum, and I'm okay with that. I don't think my camera is big enough for me to really... That's the one I was talking about. So what did they say? Cover illustration for the new Easy to Master Dungeons and Dragons game from 1991. So I don't know, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons then, but I have no idea what book this is. There's a rather famous magic card, I believe. But they also talk about some of the older, there were a lot of John Carter of Mars pieces of art. There were numerous pieces of art based on Lord of the Rings, including a Hildebrandt. There were a couple of things related to Game of Thrones. So, and there was, I meant to go look up the name. There was an artist that I don't think I'd seen their work before, and it was really... We call it painterly when you see the strokes, and it's not like this is a very real. I mean, it's all realism. It's all imaginative realism. But ones where you see the brush strokes more, and the edges, brush strokes may go beyond the edges of where parts are. If I look long enough, I might be able to find. My cat is very sad because we left for 3 days, and apparently that was the box set they came up with early in second edition. I guess I just bought the hardcover books, and I never... there's Julie Bell, Boris Viejo. And it turns out, I did not know this, but both of Julie Bell's sons are also artists. Their last name is Palumbo, and there was work by them as well. Arthur Rackham, there was not this one, but there was an Arthur Rackham. It was, in fact, this one, I believe, was the one that was in the museum. So they talked a little bit about mythology and some of the other influences, the battle of good and evil, the hero's journey, some of the other influences on fantasy art. So that was fun. There is one Dieter Litzy, and actually several of the pieces were from his collection in addition to his own piece, and that was one of the things I thought was interesting. Several of the pieces were from the artist's own collection, and I'm hoping that the book will tell me whether they picked those pieces out instead of the curator, because I think that would, like the Boris Viejo was not rippling half-naked people. Like, I didn't recognize it as a Boris Viejo just because the subject matter was different from what I usually see from him. And that made me, and it was from his collection, and that made me wonder, did he choose that because that's the kind of thing he thinks best represents his art and what he wants to say. So I'm hoping the book will clarify that. Valander says what he likes about Dieter Lizzie so much was his own stylization. Yes, it's very fun. And there was a couple of 3D pieces as well. It was really weird. They had like a little metal figure that was from like Roman times, but then they didn't talk about miniatures at all. And I thought that was really like, you could have kind of, there's only so much space in an exhibit like that, especially when it travels. But I thought it would have kind of been more follow through if they'd had that, little lead figure from Roman times, and then here's the kind of thing people are doing with that now. But alas, they dropped that ball. So I do recommend it if you get the chance. If you don't, the book is pretty full of cool stuff, and I think the guy who edited it wrote a lot of it, but there's writing by other people as well. So what else is in the Reaper boxes are these super washes that I have shown you before. And I've shown you a few pieces I worked on, but I thought it would be fun if we kind of use them live. Now, the problem I have is that these are the colors I have. So I have the black, a blue, a red, a yellow, and a green. Lacking any browns makes it challenging to do stuff like leather and skin tones and stuff like that. So I picked out orcs to work on, but I have some other pieces to the side. And I probably will work on multiple figures at the same time, because one of the things I noticed when I was working on some of the other ones that I've done is it's not that it takes a super long time to dry. It's just you can't work on an adjacent area until that area is dry. And depending on your miniature, that may not leave you anywhere to go. So it's good to have multiple pieces going to work between, and then you can get stuff done more quickly. So those are, we'll zoom in a little. I thought I had upped the brightness, but if things look too dark to you, let me know. So that's the green right out of the bottle on the main coat, and then I went over the trim with the blue to create that teal. You can also mix them. I might be dipping into some of the paints that we had looked at last week when we talked about making a compact set of paints and how you could do some tests to try to pick which paints are the best in your collection to do that with. So I might dip into like the clears or the oxides just to deal with the brown problem. I also have Reaper's current washes that have more browns. Valander says the black looks more like a Payne's gray. It is a blue black. And that's part of the problem I have. So if it was not a blue black, I could mix it with this yellow and get a khaki green. But that will not happen because it is a blue black. I will get more saturated green. But we will look at that. So, and I brought all the paints we were talking about last week with me just in case, because I ended up not having as much chance to talk about mixing colors and how you desaturate things and stuff like that as I wanted to last week. So if that comes up, I will possibly dip into some of the other paints for examples. No, I think I showed you already. So this is one I put a little extra work into. Well, actually this one started out zenithal primed, which one of my orcs is. This one I did some highlighting on. I think I did. So I used the black wash, the existing black wash. And then I went over it with the new super washes. And then I did a little bit of highlighting. So I have some white here as well. I have some white. And then I've been preferring to thin them with brush-on sealer. So honestly, I have not tested very much whether they thin down with water. I'm guessing they do. They may not have the exact same properties once you thin them with water. Because part of what, pigment is pigment. We talked about this last week. So part of what makes the properties are whatever magic sauce is in the binder and other additives. and water will dilute that, so it can change the properties of that kind of paint. All right, get rid of this nice one and use this, but I will try to show you the palette for a little bit too, so you can see how they work. And we will start with a very basic experiment, because you know me, I like to experiment. I have lots of experiments I still want to do with these. But some of the... So I did prep some figures. I've got some other Zenithal primed figures. And I did some other prep. But some of them I think I want to save until I have the full color selection. Because they have human skin and whatnot. But we will make do with the washes. So speaking of the original washes, let's get the... original, no, that's steel. Well, it might be interesting to test both, but I don't think I have. Maybe we can do both. Because I'll probably paint over the chainmail with metal and then do the superwash over it at some point. I'm going to do just a flat wash with I'll see if I can do one of each and then the superwash. So I'll do the superwash black on this top portion. Oh, actually, let's look at the regular wash first, since you probably are more familiar with that. And I may have to use my shaker machine. Pigments are heavier than the binder. They follow the suspension more. They mix up real well. It's just eventually my hands get tired. So I will be painting the metal first. This is just a test to show you on a white textured surface the difference between the original wash and the new wash. If I were going to paint first, I would do more like this, where I've painted black first. That's why I can't use them side by side, because this guy already has, you know, more shading. For a wash versus wash test, I can't use them side by side. So on the left is the original wash. Let's just pull it out a little so we can kind of see what it looks like on the palette. And this is the super wash. I will apply the original black wash to the under the belt portion. Maybe I'll do the steel on, there's a little bit of chainmail on the front too. And I don't know if this surface is going to be too textured. I mean, not too, it's just different textures respond in different ways to these things. But I did use that black wash as like a starting point on a couple of the figures I did. And it worked pretty well, the original black wash, I mean. It worked pretty well on certain kinds of textures. It wasn't quite as great on other kinds of textures. The black is a little more opaque than some of the other colors because, you know, you do want it to look black, but it thins down easily enough. So let me paint the side of this, I guess. It doesn't matter. Let me find another surface that we can paint just straight black onto. What else do I have? That is kind of a similar surface. Well, I'll do it on the inside of his shield. So there's not a lot of texture here. I'll just say he painted the inside of his shield black because he wants to look big and scary. Is it focus? Oh, it's not doing too bad focusing on the guy. Often when I was working on these, with these, I didn't use a wet palette. I used like a weld palette. I think for within a session, I don't think this is going to add a lot of water to it. But I doubt that they would stay the same if I close this up and then tried to use them again tomorrow. So this kind of palette works fine too. But I'm going to put my visor on, because the one thing about this, and it's easy to touch up if you need to, is if you get stuff on another area than you wanted to, like I got this right here, so if I wanted to paint that brown later, it would look, you know, that little bit would show through. So, and this black that I've now put on the belt would show through. So you either have to clean it up really quickly, or you have to touch it up with white, which is, you know, not the end of the world. So here's the steel wash, the original. And now my challenge will be remembering what all these little pools of paint are. But yeah, you can, I think you can see the blue here. I can see it in person. I don't know if it's as apparent. Oh, I'm not going to paint the bottle. I'm going to paint the guy. So we'll just do the original steel. Oop. On this part of his chainmail. But the old, you know, damp brush, get it off quick, works pretty well. If you do miss, which as you can see, I often do. Now I think I just got some on the fur. So I miss all over the place. And that one, I may want even a bigger brush to try to, yeah. Although who knows what color fur that I'm going to be able to mix with, I guess I can try doing a light gray and showing you where the white would come into play. So I did not see white listed in the paint colors that they listed, although there was the bone shade. I can't remember what they called it. And that, if that's light enough, that might work in a similar way. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that most of us have white paint. So that's the steel wash, the original steel wash that is currently available. That's the black wash on the bottom, and that's the new black super wash. And then all of these, of course, because you know how chainmail is, you got to go back in and find those little parts that got a bubble and didn't turn dark. But you can thin this down if you want it to act a little more like this or to look a little more gray. I'll do it again on his fur, but just to show you these wings, this is heavily thinned down, the black heavily thinned down, and then this is adding a little bit of white. So it is a different effect than just thinning something down and painting it over white will be a different look than adding a little bit of white, which is sort of nice because it extends your options. Like you get more bang for your buck in a way, because you can. So this is the brush on sealer, which seems to work well to thin it. I don't know if they continue with this, if they would make available a specific medium. So I'm trying to make a gray, so I'm trying to not use very much pigment. I just took a little brush full of the black, which is a little more intensely colored than the others. I think because, you know, like when you want black, you want black. So I'll do this half of the fur with the thinned down black, and now it is struggling to focus, isn't it? And then I'll get a little bit of, I'm going to use pure white today, but I'm sure the other whites work fine as well. I'll take a bit of that and mix it directly in to make a gray, and I'm still going to add a little bit of medium, I think. and it's a different look. So if you thin it way down, it starts to look more like the classic washes, I think. If you wanted to kind of keep more of the property of tinting upper surfaces a little bit, I think you want to add white and not just thin. But that is me. Other people may have a different opinion. Hey, Nomad Zeke and Curse 13. So I will let these dry if possible, just like regular washes. I sometimes like to let them dry in a way that is most advantageous to gravity. I think this has all started to set up pretty well, and now I'm just starting to see all those little white places that always happen with chainmail, the gray frustration. So I will leave him for now. And I also had this. I forgot I had this. So this is I think this is part of the base thing. So this is the color it comes. That's just the straight plastic. And I painted that side white so that we could kind of see the colors just on a straight texture without any distractions, I guess. I don't know. And also compare why you want to paint this over white or close to white, or at least zenithal priming. And I guess for comparison purposes, I could grab the clear red that we looked at last week. All right, so I will do the clears. I will attempt to remember to do the clears on the left side of each comparison. Zoom back in. And then this is the super wash. Now what we got? So that's so as far as the colors go, don't quote me on colors, I guess. So what I have are prototypes, and I got them like at least a month ago, maybe slightly longer. So they were very much still in progress of finalizing all the colors and everything else. So these may not be the colors that end up being in the thing. I imagine they'd be close to it. So I mean, both paints are still wet. And over here, there's still a few little spots that are wet here. There's the classic washes. That was the steel I did later. It's still wet. So I don't think there's like a huge slowdown in drying time. It's more just, the whole point, the whole point of the paint is to drift into crevices. So if you start putting wet paint next to wet paint, that's not going to go well. Nomad Zeke, what is the topic today? I am looking at prototypes of the new Reaper super washes that they're including in the Barrowgate box for ReaperCon. That's one of 2 boxes. I think the other one's called the Swag Box. There are 12 colors. You can get kind of more information about the colors and what else is in the box and everything. Was on reaperlive on Thursday. I have 5 of the paints and then a not really official paint, which I might end up using because it is brown. But I don't think this is one of the browns. No one knows what this is. I got sent this at first, and Ron said I had black, and I'm like, no, I don't. I have brown. And it's much more opaque than the others, too. I had to thin it like way down before it acted like the other ones. And so he made me paint it out and prove to him that it was brown, not black. And then he sent me brown. So I don't think that is one of the colors that's in it, but since I have it available to me, I may use it. And I also have the currently available for purchase Reaper washes. So right now I'm comparing the clears to these new super washes. And I'm also losing my brush. So this is clear red, and this is a red in the superwash style. I don't know that it's one of the ones that's for officially coming out. This is clear yellow. It currently exists. Oh, and I did mean to, I mean, both of these colors are not going to do great on the gray. I would imagine this is why we apply colors like yellow and red over a light surface. But in the case of these super washes, they're going to do better over either a light surface, or you paint it white and you do a dark wash and then you do them over, or you do zenithal prime. There's lots of different ways to kind of add additional shading if you want. That's clear yellow. Super wash yellow up here. And you can see why you would not really bother to do that over a gray surface. This is actually unpainted even. This is a base boss base that is, I believe, the color that they will come in, and that is just white paint over that. Could be primer. I'm pretty sure it's just paint. All right, now let's look at the last of the traditional primary colors, which is blue. Clear's back over here so I don't get distracted. So this is existing clear blue. And this is superwash blue, which is a very nice blue. I like it a lot. And it does dull down nicely. That's why I used versions of it for her dress. And oops. And our old friends for 4-scale, and this guy. So I think the book was straight up, and then the pants I messed around with it a little. I'm not sure I gooped enough on. Is it you know, like most washes, it helps if you goop enough on, because you want it to go into the crevices and collect there. So those are the primaries. Then I also have a green. My understanding is there are 2 greens that will be in the set. And I do have clear green. So this is clear green. And this is superwash green. Oh, one green or the other. And then we already looked at the black on here. This was original black wash that you can buy in the bottle right now. This is the black superwash. This is steel wash that you can buy right now. This is the black superwash thinned down with, I've been using brush on sealer to thin. So that's the black superwash thinned down with brush on sealer. This is, I mixed in a little bit of white to create gray. So you get a different effect if you're relying on dilution, thinning the pigment down and making it more transparent than if you mix in a little bit of white. So, and they're very mixable colors. It is unfortunate that I don't have browns and stuff, because the colors I'm going to mix are going to be very rich, but we will go ahead and do some of that. I'm going to mix the orange and the red because I wanted to bring a few different kinds of figures out today. This is actually, I'm not even sure I remember, I want to say 12 Kingdoms or something. This is an older figure that I had that's metal and already primed. So I just want to, you know, take the opportunity to show it on a few different surfaces. So I'm going to mix orange for tiger fur. See, I'll try to bring this back into frame. So it's a pretty intense orange. Do I have a piece of paper? Sure. No idea what else I was doing with that. But I don't think it's completely inappropriate to... I swear I bumped the light out. I don't think it's completely inappropriate to a tiger. I will try adding just a little smidge of the green to tone it down. And perhaps I toned too much. I don't want him to look like an unwashed tiger. So all of the mixing kind of things I'm doing, when we talked last week about how you'd have a very, you'd aim for pure colors like this as the core of a compact set. So these are, I figured this kind of does double duty because I didn't get to talk about mixing as much as I wanted to last week, of showing you some mixing tricks. So I went with a green. Blue is the color complement of orange, but you know, green is the color complement of red, which is in orange. So you could try either cool color. I just decided to go with the green because I don't know why. But so that's one tip for, this is Reaper's Matte Medium. So it's brush on sealer, and in fact a lot of sealers are essentially the medium part of paint. So a varnish is a different thing than a sealer. A lot of time, I think clear coat can be either. So when you buy things from like art brands, I'd be more careful of that, because there are some, like read the instructions, some of them will say you're not even supposed to shake them or stuff. That is a different material than a medium. But a lot of sealers are essentially, you're just putting a clear coat of paint over your miniature. Trash, seriously, I must have talked about brush on sealer like a dozen times already. I like to use it in combination with water for all washes, because it helps keep, it's nice to thin down metallics as well. It helps keep them in suspension. And since it's Reaper's matte brush on sealer, it has matting agent in it, the same as their paints. Now, as a sealer, it is not the mattest, flattest matte by any stretch of the imagination. If you have super shiny paint, it will not kill it all. But if you're sealing directly over your paint, or you're using it like this as a thinning agent, or as a dilution agent, which I do all the time, it won't add any shine to it. So I have matte. In my everyday use, I tend to use this. I do have some stuff. I got this for the golden paints. That's the one they recommend to work with their So Flat mattes. But I haven't even actually opened that up and broke it out yet. I will at some point, but I like the Reaper stuff, so mostly I just go on using the Reaper stuff. It also helps, and this is true of gloss or matte sealer. Gloss is often even thicker, although I think Anne says that in the case of the Reaper sealers, it is not. But if you have, okay, he's not a good mini to demonstrate it. Say you had like a metal copy of this guy and he had little pits or scratches from when you were filing it down or something, you can coat over with a coat of this and it'll fill in small surface imperfections and give you a smoother surface to paint on. So a lot of us do that a lot in prep. Once that trick was discovered, it got around, and we are all very keen on it because it saves some effort. And interestingly, so far as I know, matting agent, what are they? Anti-shine, I think they call it anti-shine additive, is the only way to buy matting agent just alone. So every other product I'm aware of, including from the major art brands, you're buying some kind of medium or other things that has matting agent in it, but you can't just get matting agent straight up to, just if you have a paint that's a little too shiny or for whatever other purpose. I actually have used it to create frost effects as well. But so far as I know, we will have to paint his eyes white again. Make them a cool color like green. But that is my super sad cat, because apparently 3 days is too many days to be gone. So I don't know what she's going to think about ReaperCon. Not very much. And it's not like I haven't petted her 1 million times since I returned, because I have. You can see it's going into the crevices of his muscles some, which is very nice. As with a regular wash, I like to kind of keep moving the wet edge, not bop around, but divide things up into sections. Oops, that might have been water off the ferrule, I'm not sure. So I'm trying to, where does that strap go? Possibly I painted over the strap. You see where my being a messy painter is now coming back to punish me, because those of you who paint more precisely and do speed painting will be way better at this than I am. I don't know if a tiger would have fur, a tiger person would have fur on their hand, but let's just say yes for today. Which is not to say you can't, actually, I need more of the black. Because that's a crevice nobody really needs to know anything about. So we'll just make it black and not think about it too much. But that also means I cannot put the orange over there just yet, because then they will collide. That might be okay. Because that's a shadowed area, we're going to decide that that's okay. Because you can intermix colors. I have another figure that I will do that on. I mean, you can intermix colors while they're wet, I think. At least I think you can. Have I done that yet? No, I'm not 100% sure. But we're going to see if we can create a color transition on the little dragon. Because I haven't even shown you the really magic part yet. I mean, it's a situational magic, but I think it might be useful to some of us. Oh, that's another strap I covered over. A lot of the times I decided to not worry about little things like straps. It was easier to come back over with the white layer than to try to leave them pristine and white on my first go. But that is the kind of messy painter that I am. Am I staying in frame? Oh, I think I'm doing all right today. I think I prepped this figure approximately 1 million years ago. There was long ago, it was kind of like free RPG day, but I think which is free games day or games day. You could like send away and order a set of stuff for demonstration for miniatures, and I got some of these guys that I think was from 12 Kingdoms, and some brushes from Testers, and some other stuff, and I prepped everything all up, and I have used some of them over the years in demonstrations and paint and takes and stuff like that, but I had a few left over, and I thought, well, those are some primed metal minis ready to go. I do have some Reaper primed metal miniatures ready to go, but I want to save the ones that would have like normal human skin tones and stuff like that until I have more of the colors to do more demonstrations. You will get, as with any paint, these little bubbles sometimes. And I do like to pop them if I can, because the paint won't settle where there's a little bubble. But instead of popping them, I am making them worse. There we go. I think that took care of it. So, now one thing I have found challenging, and maybe this is because I'm probably not as practiced at doing washes as some of you, is when I finish and I let it dry and then I come back to it, I'll find little white spots where I missed putting enough paint, and that it is hard to get that, make it look the same later. But if it's a tabletop guy, it's not really the end. Wow, Miniatures Den, hello, and 132 raiders. Today we are looking at the new Reaper Miniature Super Washes, and comparing them with the original washes, and just talking about mixing colors and stuff. So I mixed the red and the yellow with a little bit of green to make this tiger orange, which will now have to dry while I do something else. I haven't noticed it reactivating. I went over and did highlights on this guy after, by adding a little white into my original mixes. I didn't see any problems. I think I actually did scrub tests even on some of them, which I can do again. Let's see, let me get a scrubby brush. So the reason the paper towel is here is because I'm touching the brush to it, because if any pigment scrubs up, you would see it there. So that purple is a mixture of the red and the blue. Come over here and do the straight up red. This was a zenithal primed miniature, for those who came a little later. Well, a hair just came out of the brush, but I'm not seeing any pigment. And this is a scrubber brush. I mean, it's not like super rough bristles, but it is a somewhat rough bristled brush compared to what we would normally use. Let's try. There's a good spot. He's got lots of paint here. And I went over and added more shadows to this guy as well. And then this one, so I talked about how if you dilute it with medium, presumably water would do the same thing, you'll get one sort of color effect, but if you add a little white, you get a different sort of color effect. So this one, I had used the wash similar to that, and it was just way too dark for a skeleton, so I dry brushed over it, and I didn't notice any activation there either. All right, so while that guy dries, where's my next victim? Let's see if I can do some cool color transition-y type stuff on this dragon. What would be fun? I'll try going from red to blue on the wings. I really should paint the body first. I'm making my life more difficult. But I'm impatient to see. Because I had not tried that yet, doing like a color transition type thing. So let's see. I think I'll start blue near the body and possibly make his body blue. Am I in frame? No. We're also getting to see a somewhat smoother surface now than the fur and the chainmail I've worked on so far. Now I'll start introducing some red. Rinse my brush out and see if I can get brighter red. This time I'll start in this direction and move towards it so I don't get too much purple in the red sections. So they mix really nice colors. What I'm currently missing are the colors that you would use to have that be a less intense effect. I mean, this is a fantasy dragon. I'm okay with that one being intense, but there are going to be figures that you don't want to have quite as intense. But so you can do kind of a wet blending thing with them, and then you can also mix them together. How's Mr. Tiger doing? He's almost dry. So see, they don't take like a ton of time to dry. It's just I guess for me, it seems like a longer time because I'm used to, you know, I'm working with layers usually or glazes, and by the time I get back to the beginning, that section is dry and I can work on it or work on an adjacent area. But I've actually had a surprising amount of fun. I'm not saying because of the product it's surprising. I'm saying you guys know how I normally paint. I don't normally paint a lot of tabletop stuff. And when I do, it takes too long and I get annoyed about it. And these have been a ton of fun. And I actually said to my husband something I never thought I would say, that I may be willing to paint some of our board gaming miniatures. So I've only ever painted, I can never remember the game because we ended up not liking it. So we sold the game. I still have the figures because I didn't like the ones that came with the game, so I bought better ones. And I painted them up, so that was like 5 figures. You were like on a spaceship trying to do something. Try to keep it from crashing, I think. So I painted those. And I'm trying to rest him so that the colors will... Oh, let's get that. I mean, it's a talon. I might end up painting it a different color, but make it uniform now. Like I told you, one of my challenges with painting this way is making sure that I've got in the paint in all of the places. And then I also painted the figures from... It's not Mouse Guard, but it's a board game that has like mice. You and your friends turn into mice, and then there are these like rats and spiders and cockroaches and stuff that are trying to fight you. It's mouse something or other, something mouse. Mice and Mystics, yes, that's it. The space game, I want to say Space Alert, maybe. I mean, it's years ago now. It's like, it's not one of the newer ones. And you know, I think 5 figures. It was just like a 5-player game, and one person was like the engineer, and one person was like the captain, and stuff like that. So I like that. It's pretty. Let's see where the tiger is. So originally I had mixed up I dulled my orange down a lot, and I'm gonna do it again and just put it in more in the shadows, because you can still, you know, we've talked about kind of targeted washes and stuff before. You can be targeted and you can add different additional touches with highlighting or shading or whatever. Oh, Kirsta's also painted the Mice and Mystics. That was when I first started to learn the airbrush. I used those figures to practice on. So I did all of the main colors for each of the figures with my airbrush, and then went in and enhanced. So this is like on a few months ago, probably. I lose track of time. I painted a snake and then talked about how you could improve that snake as part of my feedback in advance for ReaperCon MSP open entries. And that was one of the things I talked about how you could do is a targeted wash if you weren't comfortable with doing like straight up layering type stuff. That's one way to add a little more contrast to bring out the forms, the shapes, the 3D shapes of objects. And like the snake, his arms and his legs and his tail, they're all cylinders. So there's going to be, like this is a cylinder. The light isn't catching it, right? Maybe the cylinder will work better. But where the cylinder starts to roll away from the light, there should be more shadow. So that's why I'm kind of working on the undersides of the arm, the undersides of the tail, and adding a bit more shading to those areas. But I could also decide that, maybe I dulled the orange down too much, and let's add a little brighter orange back in some spots. So there were my mix. That was like my original color, and then that was the color I just added shading with. And this is going to be an orange that needs a little... It's starting to look like Corbin the Barbarian. Corbin is a barbarian. I mean, he's a barbarian who's gotten used to the good life now, but he still remembers his barbarian days. He'll go on a rampage now and then if he gets the opportunity. So I can brighten up. I mean, I can put a whole second coat on if I decided that wasn't, intense enough. Or it wasn't, sometimes the best way to get a darker color is to put a second coat on. Like I did that with, I think, so her outfit, and I think the pants, I applied a second color over that because it was too pale. And I think some of this, it was mostly shading, and a lot of it I was trying to mess with the color more than anything. Like I wasn't 100% happy with the color, so I kept going in and adding more. But I think there are some colors or some effects where you're going to want to do, two coats. And I think that is, Corbin needs to be more orange. I mean, the real Corbin isn't like super orange, but I like to paint him a little more intensely. And I have painted him because they're Dark Sword Miniatures has a Corbin the Warrior cat. And they made him, Jim even asked me to get a comparative size picture of Corbin next to our other cat Archer that was already in the Dark Sword Anthropomorphic Figures line. So he wanted a picture of them next to each other for like a size comparison because he wanted to make the Corbin figure like a larger size cat than the other cats that are in that line because Corbin is not small. But that was challenging for us to do. So we were trying to hold them next to each other, and Corbin's just like, trying to get away from my cat Archer, who was perhaps smaller in stature, but not in insanity level. And Corbin was rightfully very wary of Archer because even many people were very wary of Archer. He could be a sweetheart too. It was kind of hilarious, but so that didn't work. But then later that night we got lucky, and they just happened to be standing near each other in the hall. So we were able to get the size comparison picture after all. So here, if I were trying to make this look as nice as possible, I would go back over and paint his thumb with white. Because I got a little bit of that black that I was putting on the shadows on his thumb. But I'm just going to live with it. I'm going to correct the fact that I never painted that hand at all. Yes, I'm liking the slightly more intense orange. Yeah, this they did come with swords. That one it happened to break off, and I'm like, I'll fix them up anyway. Maybe somebody can come up with a story reason why they would want to paint this guy and paint and take. So now I'm just gonna. This was a slightly yellower version, so I'm just gonna add that on some of the high places. But I suspect to really get a good effect out of that, we will want to add white. So I will come back and do that. And there's another place I missed. Once all of this fiddling is dry. See if I can get into that bright orange on there. So who else can I mess with? Well, let's see what happens on zenithal priming. So, do I like that color I made enough to call it brown? Did I make enough of it? Yeah, let's call it brown, sure. Chris said it's not broken. It's the legendary sword, the Zephyr Blade. He lulls you into a false sense of security because you think it's a broken sword, and then it's not. And I did find I was doing this when I was working on multiple figures just to test stuff out. It was like, all right, I mixed this color to be this one's hair, but hey, it works for this too. So this is the shadow color that I made for the tiger, and I'm like, close enough to leather to call it good. Let's throw it on this shield and see what happens when you have some zenithal prime going on. Very obvious spot. Let's check for more places where I missed because we know they're there. So that is the effect over zenithal prime. Did I pick a guy to do a wash over? We'll try that. So a couple of these, so I had done a wash, no, not that guy. I had done a wash over, I'd used the black wash that's available now over this figure and then applied them and then did some highlights, and I used the black wash on this figure. It did not work as well on this figure. You can see it more there, but these kinds of folds, they're not the kinds of sculpted texture that work well with washes. So there's going to be a bit of variation from that. Angry Shadow Nano, we could say invisible sword, magic, yes. He's trying to psych you out and hope that you'll just assume that it's such an awesome sword you won't even try. Hey, Greenie, go. All right, so this guy, I already did it with a black wash, so let's try it. What would work over green? Yeah, you know, that might be interesting. So I'll use the flesh wash. All over, and then see what happens when we paint him with the green superwash. So this is an existing product. And I'm even going to paint it over his tiny pants. So I chose a reddish option on purpose because red and green are color complements. So it is my theory and indeed my hope that we can get a more natural green than I got on this work when I was just goofing around the other day, because the red will be underneath the green and it will dull it down. So I may not even try to mix the green at all. I might just see what happens when we apply it directly over the surface. I probably should have gotten a bigger brush. This guy is a lot of guy. Let's see if I do have a bigger brush. He's such a bigger guy, and then I'm going to need more wash. I'm going to leave the bubbles for now and come back to them, because some of them seem to be settling out on their own. And partly these bubbles are happening because I'm trying to paint super fast so that you guys don't get bored. If I were painting with more slower, deliberate strokes, that would help. There'd still be an occasional place that bubbled, but it does reduce the bubble factor. Including on, you know, when using traditional paints as well. The more texture there is and the more quickly you are stroking with the brush, the more likely you are to get bubbles. In my experience, at any rate. Oh, also, this is just original white bones. This is what I wanted to... This is one of the things I wanted to show you guys. So I dipped this in isopropyl alcohol, as I dip all my miniatures in isopropyl alcohol to clean them, get rid of grease and stuff. But applying the currently existing washes and the super washes works directly over... this was also just straight bones. These weren't primed or painted white or anything. So if you still have a big pile of white bones, you are about to be able to solve that problem with super washes. So I was very excited to learn that. I don't know. Who out there does still have a big pile of white bones? And might be excited to be able to paint directly on them without having to do a bunch of stuff. In fact, their whiteness now becomes an advantage because these super washes work well right over them. Well, this is the original wash, but the super wash also does this because that is how we painted that little color transition on that dragon. Curse 13 has a whole box of white bones. And owns many power swords. Well, nobody better mess with your white bones or they're going to find out about the power sword. So there are a few places where gravity is making it pool a little more than I intended, so I'm just wicking those up with a damp brush. And I feel confident that there are a whole bunch of little places where I've missed, but it is what it is. Now I will, if I see any bubbles, I'm going to try and deal with it. It's a little bubble behind his knee. But yep, happily most of them dealt with themselves. I want just a little more. Nomad Zeke has some follow-up questions for Curse. A box, or are you calling your whole room a box? Because I have the feeling many of us are more in the latter for stockpiles of minis. And Trash said, are you talking about White Bones minis or what is in the crawl space? I am talking about White Bones minis. I never ask people what are in their crawl space. That's between you and your crawl space. Kiriniko can neither confirm nor deny the existence of a giant pile of unpainted bones. So, like, this almost makes me want to beg them to go back to making them in white so that we can just paint directly on them and not have to go to a lot of bother. So, just to reiterate, this is an existing wash that you can buy right now. But I did the same thing on a straight directly on a white bone surface with the wings on this guy, which have now mostly dried. There's just a little bit. That was probably, I let there be too much of a pool situation. And I think he does need the same wings on the underside, but what color do I want to paint his body? Let's do the other colors. Let's do the blue into the green. But I will need my smaller brush for that. And then I've got to solve the problem of the belly scales, but that is a different problem for my rainbow dragon. We'll get there later. Ooh, it's working nicely on these scales, I think. Now let's start bringing some of that green in. Just for kicks, let's put a little bit of the yellow here. Get a more different green. Let's see. Curse took measurements. It's only an 18 by 10 by 6 inch box. Trashorama, I think it's a good time to say that Ron was particularly adamant about these washes being in no way Reaper's version of contrast paints. I haven't used contrast paints or I think any of the similar type things. So I couldn't really compare them if I wanted to. All I know is that they are fun and I like them. And I'm looking forward to having more of the colors. This is not enough of the colors. I want more of the colors. and then more again. And I think, I mean, really like any kind of paint or technique or whatever, the more you're willing to put into it, the more you can get out of it. So if you're willing to take a little extra time to add some extra shading or do zenithal priming or come back and, you know, add some highlights or something, you can take it to a slightly different level. This is certainly, I mean, this is a nice quick way to paint minis, and depending on what I wanted the miniature for, this might be all I did. But you can enhance this as well, which I think is nice. And I'm choosing to paint this as a very colorful draggy because I like colors. Sometimes you want to paint very desaturated and dull and dreary, but this dragon is not for that. It is a magical fairy forest dragon or something. How's my big guy? Big guy's still got some drying to do. And more pooling because gravity has been having its way. So we will let, oops, apologies for bumping the camera. We'll let him dry some more, and I will finish the bottom of this guy's limbs. They're very mixable too, which I know that a lot of the market for the contrast paints or the things marketed in a similar way, the idea is you just go straight out of the bottle and go, and that's nice, but you know, we were starting with 12 colors, so we're probably going to have to do some mixing if we want to have a bigger range, and I think they're excellent for mixing, and I think if you haven't mixed very much, it can be, I think these are a very accessible way to start finding out what happens when you mix colors together because they're fairly pure color. So they should act in a pretty predictable way. Other than, you know, the black is blue black, so that is slightly less predictable. Which I could try to show the difference of that in just a second after I finish making this guy a delightful, I don't know, I guess he's not a fairy dragon, but I mean an out of the book fairy dragon, but that's the spirit of what I want him to be like. Because as much as I love dragons, I have never, because you guys haven't seen it, I have 2 shelves in our living room that are covered in dragons. But I hardly ever paint dragons, weirdly enough. Even these little guys, which I have meant to paint for ages. I think the only time I've really painted the little guys was when I was painting the Rocky the Red dragons. I used that was another time I used the airbrush, and I was not very practiced with the airbrush. So I use them as a test, which is a good practice to do sometimes with brush things too. Like there's lots of different things, you know, we talk about testing here a lot. But I had one, I think I might have had 2 of these even, that I would do the step on them before I did it on the Rockies to make sure that I had the paint mixed to the right consistency and various other things. And it was helpful because in the end, I ended up stopping with the airbrush at like I intended to put more highlights on, but I didn't like the way it looked on the airbrush, so I was able to discover that on the test figure and then be able to do it a different way on the real figures and not have to do all that work again. I need to try to find a bit of an actual break point for the tail because I'm not going to be able to get there for a minute. Luckily it's on the underside, so it won't be a huge thing with whatever I end up deciding to paint the belly scales. Oh, and it turns out that his leg is broken. I've had this figure a very long time and probably did not store it as well as one ought to. So let's pretend he's phasing in or something. But I did want to show how you can paint these directly on the bones, the white bones. I mean, you can paint them directly on the gray bones. They're just not going to have quite as cool an effect. Because I was very excited about that. All right. Oh, I think I better do his tail because of my whole leading edge problem. And I think I'll go back to the red at the tail so that it doesn't blend in as much. Although I have created problems for myself because now I'm going to have two wet edges meeting each other, but creating problems for myself is kind of my whole deal. So here we are. And there is most of a dragon, I guess. Angry Shadow Nano, I hope your head feels better soon. And thank you for joining us today. Grey Mouser asks, are all 12 in the convention set? I very quickly scanned the Reaper Live from Thursday, and it sounded, they listed out 12 colors. So if you go back, you can watch that here on Twitch, or it's already up on YouTube, and you can just scan through, just look for where it looks like there's like a white poster with text on it, and it's a summary of what is in the there's one box called the swag box, there's one box called the Barrowgate box. These are in the Barrowgate box, and they list the name of all 12 colors. I have no idea whether, you know, like I've said, these are prototypes. This yellow may be slightly different than the yellow they end up putting in it. There's only one the yellow listed, so assuming that the day matches that. There were 2 reds and 2 blues and 2 greens, though, so I don't know which one I might have of those. So I can't really speak to the color thing, but my understanding is that there are 12 colors. One of them, I don't think there's any change to the black, but again, I don't know. There was 1 black, 2 browns, 2 greens, 2 blues, 2 reds, the yellow, and a violet, I think. I'll be interested to see the violet. I like the purple that you can mix. I mean, this I did it mixing wet blending, but we can do a straight up mix. Maybe I'll do that on his tummy scales. Barrowgate box also has the, which again, this is what I have is this is the Exemplar wet palette from their Kickstarter recently, but there is an Exemplar palette in the Barrowgate set. So I don't know if it's exactly like that, but I would assume that it is of equal quality, even if it's not the same design. And then a bunch of other stuff I don't remember because I really, because like right before the show I was like, oh, I should probably check if they said anything about these paints on Reaper Live. So this is the purple that I have mixed. It's a slightly, I mean, it's a similar color, of course, but it's a slightly different effect than mixing it on the miniature with wet blending. But and they also said on Reaper Live, and I think that I should say this too, they are like, this is a trial run. They're testing this product. They are expecting to release it into retail, so you don't have to buy the Barrowgate box if you don't want the rest of the stuff. You should just be able to buy these at some point. But they want your feedback. They want to know what you think of them, any other comments that you might have about how they work. If they don't do something that you want them to do, I would assume that we can mention colors, but I don't know that I'd like focus feedback on that part as much as, you know, kind of just general how you feel about how they work and how you want them to start making all the miniatures in white again. No, I'm kidding. That's just me, I'm sure. Do for his spine, but we can't paint the spine yet anyway because everything else is wet. So that is the mixed purple, and that is the wet blended purple. And I can, of course, you know, I can add more red to this purple if I want a redder. That's the nice thing about mixing, is you get to have some input on what you get. So I have to imagine that this guy is dry. And do I want to try black stripes, even though I have not researched what tigers look like? Perhaps I do. Oh, and this is dry now. So this is the shield on a zenithal primed one. And I don't know if this is something where I might want to do 2 coats, but it does kind of look like, you know, crummy leather. So, and we'll just do a little bit more as additional shading, and not put it everywhere, because this shield is facing downwards. Can I mix more orcish green? Let's find out. So I will first test putting a little red into the green. So there's the green. And my recollection is that this did not make a brown. It made more of a black, which is nice. It's nice that you can make so many chromatic blacks and grays with these. But it does make painting orcs a little challenging. So it darkens it, makes it a richer color. Where's my test paper? So that's with a bit of red in, but it's not really going brown exactly the way one might wish. This is it with no red in it. Now I don't think mixing black in will help, because It's a blue black. So I'm just going to be making more blue. But let's give it a shot. So it's still a very rich color. It's just becoming a darker, rich color. I mean, I like that color. I used it on this figure. I added black to the green for her accessories. Because since she already had that really bright orange going on, I didn't want the green to be super in your face. So I'm going to cheat a little. Quindy said, this link will take you to the timestamp of Reaper Live where they started talking about the Barrowgate box. So if you're watching this on Twitch, you can look in the chat and click that link that Quindy just shared. Casmania, since the superwashes are supposed to be highly pigmented, would you recommend using them to thin your paint, like instead of water? You could. I mean, it'd be a way to add more intense color as well, although the clears are very good for that. I generally, if I'm just wanting to make something more transparent, I'm either going to add water, or I'm going to add this, or I'm going to add a combination of this and water. If you made something more transparent and then you lost a little intensity of color that you wanted, these or the clears would probably work as an answer to bring some of that back. All right, let's try. I'm going to get, just because they do mix with regular paint, I mean, you just have to use like little tiny bits because, of course, this is much more opaque than those paints. So I'm going to get the Oxide Red. You guys know how I like the Oxide Reds. So this is essentially a clear earth color in terms of the purity of the pigment. It's not clear in that it's transparent, but the clears are both clear and very pure color. The oxides are very pure color. So this is a reddish brown, and it should start working this skin up pretty well, I think. And I don't think I've lost, I just had to use a little bit, so I don't think I've lost superwash properties. Maybe I'll put just a little bit of the yellow superwash in there. That's a bit dark still. Gray Mouser replying to Casmania. A bit of a story behind this one. Typically, I use flow improver to thin paint instead of water, or if you will, in Games Workshop terms, Lamian medium, which is basically medium glycol and water. Yeah, flow improver is if you feel like paint is sticky and it's not coming off of your brush, it's not getting down into little crevices or having trouble painting details. Flow improver is the answer to that. You don't necessarily need a lot. There's a little bit in all Reaper paints, but it is excellent. Like, I do use it when I'm painting freehand. I used to use it to paint a lot. Over the years, I found that I need it less. I wouldn't use it to thin everything. So the difference between Lamian medium, if Lamian medium has medium as well as the surfactant, which is what flow improver is, it's breaking the surface tension. Surfactant, flow improver is an additive. That is not the same as a medium. Medium is the clear part of paint. It's got the acrylic. It makes things bind together. Flow improver doesn't. Slow dry doesn't, or whatever Reaper calls theirs. Drying retarder. Those products, whether it's from an art store or anywhere else, if it's specifically those products, most of the art store ones, they're mixing stuff together. And will say breaking the paint, like you can add enough water to break the paint. It's got to be a lot, and it depends on where in the process you're doing it. But additives can also break the paint. So flow improver, drying retarder, water, those don't have the acrylic binder in it that makes it acrylic paint that makes it stick to things. So it grabs the pigments and it makes the pigments stick to the thing. Additives don't have that. Medium has that. So I would use, if you're needing to make things like super transparent, I would use some flow improver, but then use some of the brush on sealer or wash medium, or if you have some other medium like from another company even. I would not just, have like 1 drop of paint and 7 drops of flow improver. That's breaking the paint material. Let's see. Okay, so I don't think there were additional comments on that. I think I got my green to an orcish green. So we're going to put it on the guy that had the Zenithal Prime and see what that does for us. Now, hopefully, I will remember to get all of the places that are his skin, because I messed up that tiger's hand, and I messed up this guy too, actually. So in between those two bracers, in fact, I kind of mixed this color, I think. We'll just come back in, put a little bit of that right there, and pretend I didn't mess that up the other week. Because at least I missed a whole section instead of it being like a little white spot. So really, it's interesting. This bit under the chin, the paint will really, look at this guy. I noticed this after I finished the show the other week. That's a lot of shadow under his lip. So I'm going to take just a little bit out of here before it dries and makes that super dark shadow. Now we'll get to see it work on a smoother surface like muscles. So I'd say stuff like Anirian's robe is kind of not where it's going to shine. The surface is too rolling to have areas where the pooling effect occurs. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't use it on those. It's just not going to look as cool on its own. You might need to do some targeted washes and whatnot. Or something like this, where you've got the Zenithal Prime that's added additional shading. So yeah, the 12 colors sound like they're going to be pretty flexible, and I'm very excited about the browns. Oh, there was a bone shadow one too, I think was another one they mentioned. And Ed and Ron both said they liked that color a lot. But having the oxide browns, or something similar, last week we went through and talked about how you would check your paints for ones that are more vibrant to make a compact set. But having those and having a white, I think, expands your possibilities of what you can do with these quite a bit. And then I definitely recommend having some of that brush on sealer or medium of your choice. That's a new bottle. I used up so much in testing. I mean, my bottle was pretty low, but I used up the rest of it in testing and had to buy a new one. I bought an extra just in case, because I figured I might be testing this a lot more. Hello, David Weir. Yeah, if you are buying Golden or Liquitex products, you can go on their website and read the descriptions. And once you kind of know what each of the additives is, you can sort of figure out if it's got this or that in it. If they're like, makes it come more smoothly off your brush and gives you a little more working time, that's the code for it's got flow improver and drying retarder in it. I think even the Viejo website has some descriptions as well. compare him to the guy that I made much brighter. And also, this doesn't have zenithal. It's just white over Bones USA. Oops. Paintbrush rolling through paint. I don't know if I have enough left of this orangey brown thing that I made, but let's see if I can make a little more so that both their shields are the same. Alright, I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it's in the ballpark. Hopefully we'll show us the difference of what it would look like on a zenithal prime versus a not zenithal prime. Sorry, I was checking if it was Ron texting me. Alright, so that will take a second to dry. We'll take a quick look now. And you do lose some of the brilliance, I guess I'd say, with the zenithal prime, but you get a little more shadow detail. Interestingly, I think like the detail of the scratches and stuff is coming up better with the straight on white version. And his skin isn't quite dry, but it's almost there. And not like super long to dry. So I will get a little bit of white, which I think I actually already have some, and try to do just a little bit of highlighting. Add some yellow too. White added to green really can go like too pastel or too blah or something. So I like to add a little yellow. Even with a little yellow, you can see how much I kind of dulled it down. But there's that, and I may not have added enough white to really make a difference. I'm also trying to highlight a guy that's still wet, and we definitely want some more white. So it's going to seem like a pretty stark transition on the palette, but because the paint is a little translucent, it will not. In theory, from my experience with the detective guy, it should not, look really weird on the guy. I would say I could probably even add a little more. If I were finding it too opaque, I could just add some of that brush on sealer and or medium of your choice and take it back down. And I really should have let it dry all the way before messing with it, but I just wanted to take a chance to show the idea of adding a few highlights. I don't have to go nuts or anything, but using opaque or more opaque paint for highlights is going to give you a different effect than letting the white show through. Just like mixing in the white gives you a bit of a different effect than thinning it down and letting the white show through. And then maybe I will just mix the yellow with some white for even more highlights. Did he say something like you can order convention swag? They said what the price is and probably what's in them. I wasn't able, like I was just watching really quickly before the show, so I didn't watch the whole thing and I don't remember all the details. I'm not sure if orders are actually up yet. I think they said when they do go up, delivery will be in September. It won't be before the show. Presumably if you're not going, I don't know. Don't quote me on any of that. In fact, I would say go to Reaper Live this week and direct all of these types of questions directly to the Reaper people. Oh, I was joking about the text I got. No, I had asked him a question and he was answering the question belatedly. So now I've just mixed a very light, mostly yellow and white. So, I mean, there's a learning curve, as with many things. So this isn't really me doing another layer. I would probably just do one. I just didn't get the color of that right the first time. But just, especially for skin in his face and stuff, like those are areas that if you are going to take more time, those are places to do it. I could add a little more shade as well. And I will actually use the green that was a little brighter. Bring in some more of the black even. Because I have found that richer colors in the shadows generally don't cause problems. So this is just like with the snake from a few weeks ago. Just different shapes. So it's layering, but I think it might be less threatening for some people if you just think of it as targeted washes. And it is super wash, so it really is targeted washes in this particular instance. Because he's got a great set of muscles that are fun to accentuate. All right, we have 8 more minutes. But is this guy fully dry? I don't know that he is. But you know what? We're just going to do it. I'm just going to get the bright green and put it over this, and we're going to see what happens. So this is the flesh wash that is already available. And my theory is that if I apply this green directly over it, just as I mixed a little of the Oxide Red color, which is not totally the same, but they're definitely in the same family of colors, to dull down the green in a mix that this should optically mix into a green that is a little more skin green. And you know, there's a certain show is releasing soon, so if you like people with green skin, you will have an opportunity to enjoy a TV show with that very soon. And watch She-Hulk. And it turns out I may be wrong. I don't know. It might not dull it down enough. This is why I experiment, so that you guys feel more comfortable doing it. Don't worry about the bubbles later. I forgot how big and beefy he is, and that I should have put out much more paint than I did. I'm going to do that. So hopefully the sound of me having a halls isn't too horrible, because I think I might have to do that, at least until whatever grass or something is flowering cuts it out. Even cough medicine is not taking care of everything. Nope, not keeping her on screen at all. Now, because of the translucence, I will be able to go over top with something else to try to dull down the green if I want, or just work on adding more in the shadows, or any number of options. Or maybe this is just a failed experiment and I live with it. Greenico says it is a very hulky green. Gray Mouser, it took me a long time to figure out what a pin wash is. I'm not even sure I know. I would assume something that brings out little things like rivets and whatnot. I'm not much of a wash expert, so I may have missed that one. Or I call it something else because we're always... The different little corners of our hobby make up different terminology for things. Yeah, some of the kind of pre-shading, pre-coloring experiments that I've been working with, they don't necessarily do a lot. They can do a little, but I don't think they can do a lot. I think you're going to get a little more value out of doing some stuff after, like adding a little extra shading or highlighting the way I did on the orky green guy. We will compare all of our green guys and see what we get. Just looking for bubbles. And excess pooling. so that is the green over. Oh, Grey Mouser says pinning the wash to a specific spot targeted wash. Okay, well, I think I continue thinking of it as targeted wash. Oh, and look at, see there, now I missed under his chin, pretty prominent area now that I'm looking at it. Luckily, I think it's still wet enough. And there's a bunch of bubbles under his armpit, but we're going to learn to live with that. All right, so he will take a minute to dry, and then he will need shorts of a different color, I imagine. So this is the, this isn't the straight up green. I had mixed this one last week or the week before, whenever I was goofing around with these. But I didn't have time to really make it orcish green. And there has been no additional anything to this. That's just one coat of that. This is the more orcish green that I mixed with a little bit of the Oxide Red, and then I did a little bit of highlighting on him. I did a little bit of shading too. So it's just a little bit of effort. As ever, adds to it, but depending on how fast you're trying to go. This is the green straight up. So the red has had some effect, but yeah, it's definitely had some effect. I meant playing the flesh wash over it the first time. So that might be an interesting way. Once we have access to the browns, I think I'd like to try that again, where I do the browns and then try the green over and see if that turns into a more skin color type of green. I like, when I paint skin tones for fantastic creatures, I like to kind of follow some of the same principles as, oh, thank you, you're right, Kirst, it does. Miss little spot on the knee. I like to follow the same principle as I would with humans, which is, you know, we're not really pink or red or black. It's all just different kinds of browns and stuff. So I like to do this similar thing with fantastic skin tones, where I would consider this more of a natural skin color green, and this is a more comic booky figure, so it doesn't have to be natural. But in terms of orcs, I would rather have something like this than like this. Now, I don't have a problem with people who like more fantastic things, and there are figures that, you know, it might be fun to do where it's like overall very cartoony, like this guy. But just for the general way I paint, if I'm trying to paint like a realistic guy, that this is kind of the color that I would prefer to do. So I would want to explore ways of doing that with these paints. And here I did miss just a little tiny bit right here because that is what I do. But I'm pretty happy with him now, and I don't think it was a huge amount more effort. I mean, I had to experiment a little with the highlight to figure out, you know, something that showed up enough to be a good highlight. But once I know how to do that, then I can put that in the knowledge bank or write it down. If like me, your knowledge bank doesn't necessarily preserve all of the information that you would like it to. There's sort of color straight out of the pot, but doing a lot of wet blending to make a fantastic little guy. And then the tummy scales were mixed purple with the blue and the red, which you can make some very lovely purples with. And then from what it said, there was a something or other violet, so we are getting a purple in the 12 set as well. And I need to do the other side of his wings and then figure out how to do the comb. I'm thinking maybe like red and then the tips or something else, but I will ponder that. Because, yeah, I think we're at time. But I'll go through, for people who came a little later, just to explain what I was doing. I should have stopped and explained it again, but I didn't. These are prototypes of Reaper's Newt Super Washes, which are releasing initially in one of the swag boxes that you can purchase related to the upcoming convention. I don't think you have to be able to go to the convention to purchase these. Not 100% sure. That's a Reaper Live question. But there will be 12 in total. These may not be the exact colors. Hold on, I think I got a little off true, and I like to keep it nice for everybody who's a little OCD. But they're probably pretty close to them. I believe the set's going to have 2 greens, 2 reds, 2 blues, 2 browns that I don't have any of. Some kind of bone shade shadow. I can't remember what they called it. Black, yellow, and purple. So I don't know if, did I say 12 things? Hopefully I said 12 things. So because these are very good mixing colors, but it is a limited selection, so that's why I was fooling around with how can we make browns and duller greens and stuff like that. Kunika wants to see a full-size dragon in those colors now. Yeah, I mean, it would probably work even better on a larger dragon because there'd be more space and it wouldn't look as busy. This was a guy I worked on early on, but I didn't get to where I was going to try using the black to make some stripes on him, but because of the flow properties of it, it might not be the best for doing that kind of detail thing. I think it might be a little better for doing all over stuff. But this was another one where I kind of shifted on the fly, and you can do that with these. So the original orange was kind of more like that. It was a little more orange than that, and it wasn't orangey enough. So I mixed a brighter orange and then went back over it, and I used the darker color to put some shading on. I didn't put any highlight on this guy. I was really just intensifying the color. So you can mess with them a little bit if you want, or you can just apply them straight. And I will show a few other figures. This one is one where I did mostly just apply it straight. So that's the green out of the bottle, and that's the blue out of the bottle. And then I painted the blue over the green to create the teal instead of mixing it. And I used various things to make skin. I think I did use some of the oxides to make the skin color, and I'm not sure I didn't make the hair color. So that is just straight on without much fiddling. This is straight on, but the way I did the flesh wash, which you can kind of see on his shorts, I had done that with the black wash that is already out. And I had also started this figure with the black wash. And it worked pretty well on this guy. So you can see in the folds where that darker color is, that's the black wash. And then I made this attempt at tan and placed that over it. And I think his pants a little bit did it down too. But I did the highlight thing the same way that I did on this guy. So I took whatever my original mix was and added some white to it, just to, he's got some little highlights on his hair. There's some on the shirt to get it to full white there. I'm not sure I did it on the coat, actually. There's a little bit on the pants. And some of these, I didn't have the black yet. So these are, you can mix blacks with these colors. You can mix some really nice blacks with these colors, actually. So I was making up anything that looks black on some of these earlier ones. So these were experiments with pre-shading with just washes. And this was an experiment over Zenithal Prime. He was a figure that I happened to have that I had Zenithal primed. I mean, it works, but I don't know if I like kind of the wash or the targeting things a little more. I did one. Was it this one? Did I? I think I dry brushed white on one of them. I have a record somewhere because as I'm doing them, I will write down what I did because this is my brain. This might have been the one where I think I did the wash and then I dry brushed the white over the high parts, which I wasn't sure that was worth the trouble. This guy, I hadn't thinned down the black enough. Well, I mean, the bone came out darker than I wanted, so I just dry brushed white over it, and that worked fine, and then all the rest are just straight super washes, including the grass. And I thought he came out pretty good for the 1 millionth time I painted the skeleton. This one I painted metallics and then did thin down superwash black over that. And then the blue color is all superwash. Then I think, yeah, I painted blue over the metallics on the center and maybe on his chest. Try to get like a bit of a jeweled effect. So it's meant to look a little different than the gray metal. And I did do additional shading on this one. So I did additional shading here where the shield folds down, and then additional shading in the crevices of his clothing. Maybe on the metal. I don't know if I did additional shading on any of the metal. I don't think so. I haven't finished these ladies yet. I need to paint metallics and then finish them up. This one's pretty close to finish. So I've been experimenting with like directly on bones, with paint, you know, doing paint as a primer over bones on metal. These are primed metal figures, some of them. I'm pretty happy with this one, actually. Although I guess it really seems like there should be something on the book, but if she was my game figure, maybe she wouldn't be. I did mess with the hair a lot because I'm like obsessive about hair. I just wasn't happy with the color, so I put a lot extra shading on the hair. And I did 2 coats of the green color to get it dark enough. So some things you want to apply multiple coats. And then, of course, I had to make up skin colors, so none of the skin colors are relevant on those. But that is a closer look at the super washes, which, you know, maybe I'll just play around with that some more next week. I don't know what I'll do next week. We've got that, and I had those zombies that are in progress. But since this is more ReaperCon related, I might do that. Or I might grab something and kind of do a bit of the repaint thing, you know, do a critique and repaint. If you have anything particular of those things that I've said that you'd like me to do, feel free to send me a message or comment in chat, and I will take it under advisement. The next, I think I have 2 more shows before ReaperCon. Does that sound right? 2 more shows? Please tell me it's 2 and not just 1. Panic. Those will be ones that I don't have a lot of prep time for. So I will be, you know, painting or, you know, mixing or doing stuff where I can do stuff on screen instead of having to do a bunch of stuff in advance like I did for the colors, because I will be freaking out about finishing ReaperCon stuff. Thank you all for joining me today. If any of the raiders are still here, thank you for joining us as well. Quinny's going to find us a raid, I bet, and I'll see you all next week. So I'm going to stop talking now and let Quinny find a raid. Bye, everybody.